we're going to introduce our wonderful speaker spark today, and I'm very grateful to be able to introduce her. Um, our speaker's topic is a brighter new year. Excuse me, a new year, a new time, new beginnings. Our speaker asks, what would it be like to show up in the new year as more of who we truly are? Love, presence, possibility, joy, open-mindedness, gentleness, and faithfulness. This is reality. We were made to live in presence, not imaginary consequences. Presence is where our point of power lies. Our speaker invites us to consider cultivating a new habit, such as catching patterns of thought that no longer serve us and recognizing that these thought patterns may be just another call for love. She invites us to see things from perspectives that we may not have considered before and ask thought-provoking questions. These questions asked with our willingness to listen can open us to hearing a heart-centered direction. Let us continue the new year with clear, inspiring intention and style. So I'm so happy this morning to be introducing Randi Suskin. She almost feels like a sister to me. I don't know her that closely, but the few times that I've had wonderful opportunities to speak with Randi, and the most recent at the Mystical Women's Circle, I'm always impressed by her calmness, her wisdom, and her compassionate approach to life and difficult situations. I feel centered when I'm around her. And so I like to tell you a little bit about Randi. Randi Suskin is an advanced certified life coach and both student and teacher of A Course in Miracles. She specializes in one-on-one coaching and facilitates workshops and a weekly Course in Miracles study group on Zoom throughout the year. So let's give a warm welcome back, circle welcome to our speaker, Randi Suskin.
Okay, Annette, thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you. And I'll basically be elucidating all the things that you were speaking of. But I just wanted to take note quickly that when you spoke, you mentioned George Washington Carver as the man who discovered at least 300 uses for the peanut. And when he was asked how he did that, he said that when you truly love something, it reveals its secrets to you. So I've just always loved that. So I just wanted to mention that, yes. Okay, so I'm going to start with an entry from a wonderful day book written by Eileen Caddy. Eileen was one of the founders of Findhorn Foundation, which is a wonderful, beautiful spiritual community in Scotland. And her life's work was to guide people to turn within so that they may find their own source of inner guidance. So here's Eileen. Lift up your heart and enter the new year with the knowledge that a truly wonderful year is there ahead of you. Behold the very best come forth out of everything. I can tell you what a glorious year it will be. But unless you accept what I say with a heart full of gratitude and expect the very best because your faith and trust are in my word, it will not come about. Eileen, by the way, she used to spend 5 hours a day in meditation to hear this voice of God. So this, of course, is what's coming through her. You have to hold on to my wonderful promises and believe. It is not a question of believing with your mind. You have to believe with the intuition, with that inner knowing which comes from the highest, from me. Visualize me going before you, preparing the way, making the seemingly impossible become possible. Only the very, very best, the perfect, is for those souls who truly love me and put me first in everything. So, a new year, a new time, new beginnings. So what do we do with the new year, really? We start with these messages of a new year, a new you. There's a lot of emphasis on us having to be new. I want to question that and put out a different idea. Maybe 2021 is a great year to stop trying to change ourselves and start being more of who we really are. Wouldn't it be nice to be more of who we really are instead of some kind of edited version of ourselves? Or to really be with others instead of our edited versions of them, so that there can actually be two people in the conversation instead of four. It's important to look at the idea of change, since this is a life of action, a life of change, and it is best to see where we need to do that and take the action necessary to bring it about, to take those leaps into the new and trust it will be better than what we left behind in the old. But the other paradigm to consider is a paradigm of growth. The idea of change coupled with the idea of growth. The idea of evolution as opposed to resolution. So that the change isn't coming from any kind of a pressure for us to change, which often comes from some kind of a self-rejection, where we may be rejecting parts of who we are, feeling we're not enough somehow, things like that. But when it's paired with growth, it's coming with vision. It's holding it differently. Louise Hay spoke of not just going through our lives, but growing through our lives. So it isn't so much how would I like to change, but how would I like to grow and evolve. And it's actually wonderful when we run out of ideas about how to do that, how to live. Well, the ego wouldn't agree with that, but we can now start to listen to the intelligence of our soul to show us how to live, how to grow, and to show us how much we actually have been growing. Our ego seems to have amnesia or blind spots when it comes to our successes. But it's when we run out of ideas, we can become most receptive to our inner, loving, impeccable guidance. It's when we can allow the intelligence of love to inspire how we think. So here are some questions and some suggestions. What do we want to be able to say no to this year in order to be able to say yes to the truth more fully in our lives? What do we need to let go of in order to be able to stand with love in certainty of purpose? Where do we create barriers within ourselves that block us from the path of love, which in our hearts we know is the one we're put here to travel on? I think it would be fair to say that for many of us, our lifetime's work is to connect with our hearts. Can we get to a place where we say, I do not want this pattern of behavior anymore. I do not want to continue in the same way of being. I do not want to think about myself or others with all of these judgments, which in A Course in Miracles tells us clearly that judgments are the opposite of love. I want to remember who I am at the truest and deepest level, to represent Him who has sent me in the highest and the best and the most loving ways. The more we live from the best inside of us, the better we do. And that does not include living from smallness, weakness, guilt, and fear. So I'm finding that letting go of thought patterns that no longer serve me to be very helpful. I'm paying more attention, and they're becoming more easily recognizable. I'm noticing a lot more. The old thought patterns, they have a feeling of old, of weakness, of smallness, of conditioning learned from my family, the lineage of my family. Criticism, desperation, expectation, entitlement, they're all learned. They emanate from that small self, the self-image that is all made up from the get-go when we're very young. That, thank God, doesn't have anything to do with the truth, the love, the wisdom, the light, the gentleness, the strength, the kindness, the compassion, the joy, the creativity, the beauty, the knowing that we come in with, the love that we're created from. The letting go of the old creates space. It creates space for the newness, the truth, the miracles to land. Catching ourselves in patterns of thought that no longer serve is a wonderful habit to cultivate. An old thought pattern I've recently released is the letting go of the plans I've had for another person's life. How silly, imposing, a typical maneuver of the small, frightened ego wanting to have its way and be right. Love doesn't do that. Love doesn't impose. It waits upon welcome. It waits upon invitation. And it is the only thing we can rely upon. It unfailingly awaits us with open arms. But it can be interesting to notice our own particular brands of neuroses. I was partly unconsciously and consciously creating what I thought would be a good plan for a man I was recently in a relationship with. There was love, good intention, and some good ideas that he agreed with, but that's for him to act upon if and when he's ready. It looked like his ready, if and when, wouldn't be for a long time, and that wouldn't work for us. We're in different stages of our lives. I let go of the relationship on New Year's Eve, and I've always liked Adyashanti's definition that enlightenment is no longer postponing the inevitable. Better sooner than later, once you know. It was hard to let go because there was some very good, very valuable, loving things about our connection. I still feel sad about it, but I knew in my heart that I was trying very hard to make something work that on a deeper level wasn't working. And this has happened before. I've stayed way too long in relationships knowing that they weren't working. This is something that has been in my lineage. I feel there's a great likelihood that my mom and my sister, both having passed away early, had a lot to do with them not leaving unhealthy relationships. The legacy has been broken, and it's good. I've grown a lot through this experience. I did a lot of journaling, surrendering, and inner work with it. I highly recommend doing that with emotional honesty all the way through with any difficult situation. Emotional honesty brings forth spiritual clarity. Shortly after the breakup, many insights and experiences started coming through. More and more gifts of God, such as experiencing more of His strength, more acceptance, more patience, more peace, deeper listening, a greater ability to slow down to the speed of life, and a greater willingness to wait to be shown by life, the life that is living through me, what the next best step is to take. Patience hasn't always been easy for me in certain regards, but now there's a lot more patience and trust to tap into, and a genuine wanting to hand every single aspect of my life over to God. In the Course, it says, "Be you in charge, for it is your direction that I would follow, knowing it will bring me peace." Dorothy McLean, the last surviving founder of Findhorn, passed peacefully last year when she was 100 years old. When she was asked what was the most important thing she's learned in her lifetime, she said there are three things. The first is, I start the day with God. I brush my teeth with God. I make all my decisions with God. It's the most fun way to live. The second was she wrote a book called Come Closer, which was one of the messages she received from within. Her encouragement to everyone is to come closer to their heart, to the oneness, to the love within. And the third most important thing she learned was to love with everything you've got. On her 96th birthday, a friend of hers asked if she has any ambitions for her life, and she said, only to be more loving. Isn't that really the point of everything? A question I've asked myself often is, how can I be a little more loving today than I was yesterday? Sydney Banks, an enlightened Scottish welder, said, a mind with love and good feelings cannot go wrong. A mind with love and good feelings cannot go wrong. I get it now. I feel the rightness, the truth, the love, the alignment, the coming together of all of it, even though I do not live it all the time. But there is the knowing that what we do have is an inner yes or an inner no. And I'm very grateful for what has become a sincere willingness to notice, slow down, listen, follow, and then act as swiftly as possible upon my impeccable guidance that, as I can, that inner yes and no, as I'm willing, able, and remember to do so. There is a genuine wanting to know the thoughts of God, as Einstein said. Take the best and leave the rest. So my thoughts, my life, my actions, and expression here on earth will be sourced more and more from that which is real and beautiful and loving and true. Those are the things I now truly value. Beautiful demonstrations of love. A good question to ask is, what are some of the things you truly value now? It says in the Course, I will not value what is valueless, for what is valuable belongs to me. How do you want to show up in your life now? Another good question. What does my soul want for me this year? What does God, what does love wish for me this year? I don't know if anything creates more space for miracles to land than forgiveness. The realization that what happened to your ego did not happen to your soul. When there's the recognition the power you thought the other person has over you does not exist. It's just a story that we keep retelling. Forgiveness is an act of self-love. Our past may not have been so great in some ways, but now we can create a better future. It's a gift we give ourselves, and it turns out to be a blessed opportunity to have a second lifetime within this one. I can honestly say in this moment, I have forgiven everybody for everything. But the big one for me was a family member I lived with who was terribly abusive. I was practically mute and depressed, suicidal for 10 years, but I have forgiven him. I have very brief conversations with him a couple of times a year, and he's always grateful and says, Randi, I don't know what it is, but I always feel better after I talk to you. I know what it is. And it's so much better than holding on to the resentment, the fear, the toxicity, the righteousness, the story, which resulted in so much limitation in my life. The ultimate freedom is seeing it's a story and not have that be the navigator of our lives. Memories or thoughts cannot hurt us without our permission. But it said our wounds are the doorway to our purpose. And that situation has enabled me to find my true home, which no matter how far we travel, we can never leave. It's only our awareness of it that temporarily goes elsewhere. Thank God, something in us craves to go home.
Randi?
Yes.
I know, I just, while you're right here in this point, I wonder if you could just explain a little bit how you went through that process. What did you actually do?
In terms of
the forgiveness in that situation, and that's letting go of that story.
Yeah. So forgiveness, well, first of all, Glenda, I had a genuine intent. I saw how much it was holding me back, and it just wasn't good for me. And I thought about what had happened, the things that had happened, not all the time, but a lot of the time. And so there was a sincere intent, a genuine intent. I wanted to be free of it. And one of the things that I did was, one day I sat down with a big white pad and I started to write to everybody I could think of who I wanted to forgive, everybody. And I started with the easier ones. And I just wrote and wrote and wrote anything that came to mind, anything that I felt, anything that I remembered, wrote. And I did this for even including, I had mentioned, there was this boy when I was walking home from junior high school. Remember those long stocking hats with the pom-pom on the end? And I was walking home and he took it off and he spit in it. I even forgave Danny. I'm just saying, like anybody, everybody who came to mind, I wrote and wrote and wrote. And 4.5, 5 hours later, I got up, and then I would say that one of the main things that I did was I called upon what I felt was my angel of forgiveness, because I knew that of my own self, that small self, that Randi, I wasn't able to forgive. I wouldn't even know how to begin to do that. So I called upon what felt to me like an angel of forgiveness, and I handed it all over. and I asked for it all to be released and all to be freed. And again, it's all, what's so great, Glenda, is when we do that, what we have on our side is the backing of God, of love, of the universe. It's like you can't come up with a better partner. I mean, you can't do better than that. And I think kind of feeling that and having a sense of that enabled me to experience it. And basically, essentially, that's how it was taken care of. So I do with clients, because forgiveness is really, I'm not a if I had a niche, which I don't, because I coach people on anything, but if I did, it would be forgiveness. Because all we do in 1 or 2 sessions, that's all it takes, is basically we go through an exercise together. And I get some information, of course, on what's been going on, and help them to realize things like the cost, how great the cost has been in their lives for holding on to the resentment, the grievances, the pain, the difficulty. And it's done. It's like, again, and it's just like calling in, like when we do that it's an invitation for that love, for God, for the miracles to come on in. And it happens. And you're able to move on from there. It's truly a miracle. And the gifts that come from it are immeasurable. They're immeasurable. It just opens up, oh my God, like an open heart. I mean, I physically, even physiologically, felt like after that, I did that, like an opening of my heart. And from there, my work got so much better. Again, it's, what are we focusing on? And it's just helping it all come together in such beautiful ways. All these connections of these truths that I've been hearing and learning about and studying for 30 years. It's like all comes together. And most importantly, it works, it does. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. So basically, the last thing I was going to say, and then we could go on to the Q&A, if that would be good, is a quick shout out for presence. That we're designed to live in the present moment, not to live in imaginary scenarios with imaginary consequences. We aren't designed to know what we're going to have for dinner in 2 weeks or what we had two weeks ago. We're not designed for that. All that we're looking for can be found in presence. Eckhart Tolle said, you can make a choice to be present rather than indulge in useless thinking. I love that. You can make a choice to be present rather than indulge in useless thinking. Our love, our calm, our wisdom is not in the past, which is over. It isn't in the future, which hasn't happened. And sometimes we say we'll be more present when everything's a little more perfect, when we're more organized, when we have the right job or the right relationship. But we have to say no, that we're going to be more present now, so that we can make the connection to our heart of who we really are. Again, Louise always said our point of power is in the present moment. That's what we're created to live in the what is, not in the what ifs. We're created beautifully. So we'll go into the Q&A. I think it's a good time, right? I think we're good with that. And of course, I welcome any input, any questions, and I'll just mention a couple of questions if this is something you might like to answer. So one can be, what is one way you feel you'd like to grow in 2021. If you were to name one sacred yes for this year, what would that sacred yes be for you? Or what would make this your most enjoyable year yet?